Since I started this channel about 18 months ago, I've created 65 videos all dedicated to reverse glass art and the kind of manual processes that go with it. Only 10% of those videos use one of the best tools I own, which is a CO2 laser. The majority of the others are done using a sandblaster. So what I'm going to do today is compare the two on a basic design and see how they hold up in a few different areas. So ease of use, the kind of speed of production, the final finish, details, all of those sort of things. Going to do a side-by-side comparison. But before I crack on with that, if you're a fan of reverse glass, gold leaf, sign painting, digital processes and much more, then you're in the right place, because that's all this channel's about, and I try to release a video every couple of weeks. Also, if you'd like to support the channel, there's a link to my Patreon in the description. I reward my patrons with a different vector design every month, early access to the videos, credited at the beginning of the video, and a load of other things that I upload to Patreon throughout the month. There's also a link to my Etsy shop where I'm selling some designs and a few lamps that I've made, and the Facebook group where I think we're nearly 900 strong now, all varying degrees of skill. Really good place to go if you're getting started, or even if you're experienced and just want to kind of hang around amongst some like-minded people. Anyway, cracking on with today's vid, what I've got so far is I've prepped half a mirror. Now, I'm not going to go through the full process because I've covered this in a lot of videos, so I've got to put a link to those up here. But in a nutshell, I've done a design, I've converted that design to a vector, cut that out onto a piece of vinyl, applied that vinyl to the back of a mirror, and then removed that stencil. Just a little bit on the design, I've used a bit of software called Kittle. Kittle's an online platform with an ever-growing library of really, really nice designs. You can search via business type or just scroll through the favourites. I've made a video about Kittle and how to use it that I'll put up here. I've also put a link to it in the description because they've accepted me on their affiliate program. So if that is something that you'd be interested in, if you wouldn't mind using the link below, then they'll chuck me a couple of quid for my troubles. Just want to say this isn't sponsored by Kittle. I thoroughly endorse it. It's a really good product and I do use it myself. So just wanted to put that out there that this isn't a paid promotion. Anyway, let's get out into the shed and start the first part of this process, that is the sandblasting. Right, about to put this in the blaster, but I forgot to mention earlier how long it's taken so far to get to this stage. Now, not including the design, because I'm going to be doing that for both pieces, albeit using Kittle, this design I think took about 4 minutes, so again, definitely worth taking a look. But when I'm talking about the kind of cutting process, applying it to the glass, picking it out, this has taken me about 15 minutes so far. Now, I think that's going to be made up in the sandblaster because I'm pretty certain I'm going to be able to do this in one go. And by that I mean my compressor is only small, so if I was sandblasting a big piece, I can sandblast a bit of the glass and then I have to wait for the compressor to fill up with air again. Piece this big, I think I'm just going to be able to do this in one go, so I'm thinking probably 1.5 minutes, I reckon. So, the time will be sort of caught up here, whereas in the laser, there's probably no prep, but it's going to take a bit longer. Anyway, we'll see. Just pop this in. Let's have a look. Right, so that took 1 minute 45 seconds to do the sandblasting. Didn't have to recharge a compressor, so all that time taken up on the picking was certainly kind of made up for with how quick it was to sandblast. So it's here in the laser, ready to go. I haven't turned the laser on yet because it's a bit noisy. And a few things to mention here. So firstly, I'm using a focal length of 2 inches. What that means on a laser is you get these kind of nozzles, or they're not called nozzles, but for purpose of this video, this nozzle, it's got a lens in it. And that lens is dependent on the sort of length of this. So this is 2.5 inches. So that's a 2.5 inch focal length lens. And that kind of means as the laser comes down into the lens, it will focus it. And the longer the length, the longer the sort of depth of the cut, but it's not quite as fine. I know there's probably a load of people who own lasers now shouting at the screen, but this is my basic understanding. And that is the longer the focal length, it's better for things like cutting. The smaller the focal length, the better for things like really intricate engraving. That's not quite the finest. You can go down to 1.5 inch, but I use this for pretty much everything, and I etch big bits of wood. I do really fine sort of mirrors and stuff like that. So I think The small 1.5 inch is probably for things like when you're making rubber stamps with really tiny little letters that need to be kind of engraved out of the rubber. Anyway, moving on, I've now got my design in Lightburn. It's exactly the same size as the other one, just to go on the other half of the mirror. What we've got to do here is flip it because it's going on a mirror. And the reason this is inverted is because anything that's black is going to be engraved or etched, and anything that's white isn't. I've got presets down here, which you can see in the top right as I switch through these, and this is my preset for a mirror. So if I double click on this, that shows me what my settings are for a mirror. It's going to go 400 millisecond with a max power of 35. The only other thing to note is that I have 2 passes. Now, when I do one pass on a bit of glass, the difference between the laser and the sandblaster is the sandblaster is actually etching that surface. The laser is kind of making minute, tiny little fractures. And I find when you go over it twice, it sort of tidies them up a little bit. That might not be the right word, but it certainly, I think, gives a sort of better result. You have to kind of work on your settings depending on your laser, because I have done a lot of trial and error, and when I've done the second pass, sometimes that can just remove that sort of fracture and make it peel away, giving you a really uneven surface. But that's for you to sort of test and run that trial and error on your own machine. So anyway, let's get this turned on and start the etching. Okay, so that's all the etching done, and you can see from a distance they're pretty identical. And I hope that sort of speaks to the quality of both methods. So what I'm going to run through now are the sort of intricate differences that you might not see at a distance, but you can definitely see up close. Before that, I'll just mention that the laser side took 8 minutes per pass, so that's 16 minutes in total to complete the job. Now that sounds like it's close to the sandblasting method, which was about 17 minutes, but in reality, the sandblasting method took me 17 minutes. The laser method took the laser 16 minutes. So I didn't really do anything. Once that's kind of in place, you press play and then you can go and do whatever you like. So when it comes to the time and effort involved in preparation, the laser wins hands down. So let's have a look at some of the details. So looking at the finish, the laser has got the kind of, an almost iridescent effect where that has gone backwards and forwards, and you can see the kind of almost lines where it's gone backwards and forwards. Now, I really like that. I think it's a nice effect, but it is something that is noticeable up close, I suppose, but certainly not distractingly noticeable in the fact that it looks bad. But comparing that to the sandblasted side, that is just so clean. I much prefer the sandblasted side. I think between the two, the result you're going to get on the sort of close-up finish is better with the sandblasted method. Looking at details, let's go over to the small print where it says Glass Art Tutorials. And you can see quite clearly, I think the laser has done a much better job. That's because although the vinyl cutter is extremely accurate, it's not going to be able to be that accurate when it comes to tiny sort of letters like that, but the laser is. So you come over here and between them, I just think you can see every serif on the fonts on this one. So laser for me is winning out when it comes to the sort of finer details of the two. So that is 2-to-1 for the laser at the moment. And there's another test that I'm going to do, and that is to see how it holds paint. So I'm going to use the same colour scheme using Signwright and enamels, and then we'll see what the better finish is after that. Right, and that's it. And the painting hardly took any time at all. So if you look at this as a process from end to end rather than the effort put in, I would say to do one of these, you're probably looking around about 25 minutes. And, for a custom mirror, that's a really decent amount of time to produce something like that. So anyway, let's jump in and have a look at this. Okay, so let's start by looking at these from a distance, and they both look really good, which, I'm happy with. So the logic behind the colour scheme, it's not the best aesthetically, but I wanted to use a black, a white, a kind of vibrant colour, and a metallic colour. So that's what I've done here. So I'm just going to turn the light on. So start on the laser. So what you've got is you can see the texture, and it sort of gives it an iridescent shimmer, which I do think is quite nice, but it's not sort of what I was aiming for. And I suppose, you'd have to test all of your colours to know whether this is going to have a different effect on certain ones, because I think white looks exactly as I'd expect it to. The black isn't quite black, and it's got the sort of flecks to it. The red has definitely lost some of its punch, and the gold looks good. I think it suits that sort of the sort of iridescent shimmer that is the effect that's the result of the laser. So moving across, and you can see already everything on here is so solid, all the colours, and I think, yeah, solid black. The red is exactly as it is when it comes out the tin, and as you'd expect it to be. The gold looks really nice as well. So yeah, I think, for this test in terms of the colour, I think the Sandblaster wins hands down. Okay, so in terms of the tests I wanted to do, that's 2 apiece. But I think overall, if we're going to crown a winner, I think the Sandblaster in this case is the winner, just because of how it holds those colours. Now, this is a completely isolated test, not saying that one is better than the other, because that's not the case at all. You're not going to be able to create a glue chip sign with a laser, and you're not going to be able to etch a wooden tabletop in an hour with a Sandblaster. That's just a couple of the things that we'd use one or the other for, but they cover a multitude of uses. So in this particular case, for making the kind of custom reverse painted mirrors, Sandblaster wins for me. But I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please subscribe to the channel and click the little thumbs up icon, and please share it with anyone else who you think might enjoy it. So till next time, cheers.